All right, so I've started the recording so that this meeting can be shared with any attendees who are not able to attend. We're really excited to be joined today. I'm going to give a moment for some people to join, but I'm really grateful to everybody who's hopped on already. My name is Sunny. I am the program manager at It Gets Better Canada. We're really excited to be welcoming you to the Indigeneity Online Digital Advocacy with Indigenous Lens event. It Gets Better Canada is a charity dedicated to uplifting, empowering, and connecting two-spirit, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer youth through the power of storytelling and community building. I'm joining you today from Treaty 13. It's important for me to acknowledge that the land on which I live is the traditional territory of Huron-Wendat, the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, Métis, and the Mississauga of the New Credit First Nation. Today, this meeting place is home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island, and we're grateful to have the opportunity to work on this land. Now, this event we're doing today is leading up to the Truth and Reconciliation Day next week. For me as a white settler, this day is an important reminder of our treaty obligations and how we have not met the calls to action in the Truth and Reconciliation Commission report. For fellow settlers, I ask you to join me taking time today or on September 30th to educate yourself further on the land in which you live, the Indigenous people who lived and continue to live on those lands, and the treaties that governs it. I encourage you to reflect on your relationship to the land and the waterways and what actions you can take to work towards the realization of the calls in the Truth and Reconciliation Commission report. Today, we're going to be speaking about colonial violence, discrimination, and residential schools. I want to take a moment to recognize that these conversations can be challenging. I encourage anyone who is feeling uncomfortable and needing support to find local or national services on our Get Help page at itgetsbettercanada.org. I'm so grateful that we're able to offer the space for these conversations today, thanks to funding from the Department of Women and Gender Equality. We received this funding to help address the unique challenges of 2S LGBTQ+ youth in Canada, focused on enhancing mental health, combating online hate, and improving digital literacy. Thanks to this funding, we've also been able to release Glow. It's a free mobile app focused on empowering 2S LGBTQ+ youth to navigate online channels through safe and empowering means. You can download Glow from the App Store to hatch a Glow pet, to nurture and style as you guide through various educational journeys. I encourage you to check it out after this event. But in the meantime, I'm excited for us all to learn from our incredible panelists today. If you have any questions during the event, you can submit them through the anonymous Q&A function on Zoom. Our panel today will be facilitated by a wonderful member of our Youth Advisory Committee, Rowan Morris. They is a 24-year-old trans man currently living in Treaty 8 territory in Fort McMurray, Alberta. Rowan is initially from the East Coast and is Acadian Métis. Rowan currently works as the Indigenous and Rural Outreach Coordinator for Wood Buffalo Pride and is the founder of Trans Rights YEG, an advocacy collective he built while living in Edmonton. Rowan is a reconnecting two-spirit person and is using his opportunities in community to connect with his culture and identity. Rowan has been involved in trans and queer advocacy since the age of 14 and has learned how to use his voice to challenge rising hate. Rowan is a subject matter expert on online manifestations of anti-trans hate and countering misinformation. Trans advocacy and community education is truly a passion of his, and outside of his formal community work, Rowan is a drag king known by the name Dad Bod Rod and is a proud dad of 2 loving cats. On a personal note, I love working with Rowan, a very valued member of our Youth Advisory Committee, and I'm really excited to introduce them as the facilitator of this panel, and I'll hand over the reins.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Sunny. I, for one, am so happy to be here. Like Sunny mentioned, I'm joining today from Treaty 8 territory, also known as Nistuayu, within region of Wood Buffalo. This town is also called Fort McMurray, and I am so grateful every single day to the Cree, Dene, and Métis people who have cared for this land until my time as a visitor arrived. If it wasn't for the caretakers and cultural keepers of this land, I wouldn't be able to do the wonderful things that I do here. So I'm so grateful every single day that I get to live and work in this beautiful place. I am so excited today to be joined by 2 wonderful, incredible panelists. The first is Haley Robinson. Haley is a Cree Filipinx Two-Spirit actor, model, and advocate residing in Ottawa. Growing up in Alberta and adopted into a white family, Haley yearned for community. After getting sober from years of struggling with addiction, they took to social media to share their journey of reconnecting back to their cultures and their bio family and creating representation for folks like them in the media. Haley is also an ambassador with Sex Fluent, which is an online nonprofit part of CANFAR, the Canadian Foundation for AIDS Research. Welcome, Haley. We are so happy to have you.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Awesome. And also alongside Haley, we have Trinity Anton. Trinity is a 22-year-old proud mixed two-spirit Haudenosaunee woman from Oneida Nation of the Thames, Ontario, and Malta, an island in Southern Europe, but was born and raised in Southwest Ontario. Trinity works as a multidisciplinary artist, content creator, model, and Indigenous youth advocate. After taking her cultural reconnection journey and advocacy to social media during the start of COVID, her platform unexpectedly grew into a relatable and inclusive space for over 17,000 users on TikTok, where many other folks began sharing their similar or exact experiences in the comments of her videos. Trinity's advocacy is centered around MMIW awareness, the effects of intergenerational trauma, mental health and addiction awareness, and breaking social stigmas and stereotypes towards mixed Indigenous folks. Trinity, we are so happy to have you here too.
I'm so happy to be here. I'm so excited.
All right, amazing. So before I jump into the questions, I need to preface a warning for everybody here. I have two cats who both just woke up from a nap. They're already circling my wheelie chair. They may jump on to my desk and keyboard. The amount of times a call has ended with me saying, Edgar, no, and then it goes to black. I really hope that doesn't happen, but if it does, please forgive me. I will be back in a few minutes. We were just talking before everybody joined about all of our cats and the problems they like to cause online. So with that being said, and hopefully bearing any furry intrusions, we have a variety of predetermined questions and topics that we're going to start with today. Then once we, talk through that conversation, we're going to turn the floor over to you. So if you have any questions that you'd like to ask myself, Trinity, or Haley, we'll be happy to answer those. Our good friends, Sunny and Ella from It Gets Better, will be going through the comments and picking them out for us to respond to at the end. But the first question that I have for you folks is how can 2S LGBTQ plus Indigenous advocates use virtual methods to advocate for their communities? And how have you used those methods? Haley, would you like to start?
Yeah, sure. So being able to use the media in the way that we do now, it's easier to access education and what is it called? And to bring awareness to things like sexual health and harm reduction and mental health, and being able to find resources and sources and connect people together as well. I feel like before this whole age of being able to access things so easily on the internet, I feel like it was really hard and people felt really alone, or like they were going through things by themselves, and like they couldn't understand if people were relating to them or if like other people were going through the same stuff. And so it's been so much easier to help open like doors and to open like communities and connections. And yeah, I think it's like, even though online can also be like a really scary place too, like I'm not saying that being online is always like a great experience, right? You're gonna get people that are like hateful and mean and like misrepresentation and like false information and stuff. And so it's really hard to kind of weed out and to like grasp onto like what's real and authentic. But when you do, it really like again helps open up doors and like makes people feel like they're part of something or like they're connected to people.
Yeah, totally. I echo a lot of what you said, Haley, and like that accessibility piece is so important considering how many of our nations and communities were forced into really remote areas that don't have regular access to, in-person programming, workshops, or even getting the materials that you may have easily accessible in more urban centers. It really does bridge a strong gap. Trinity, did you have anything you wanted to add to this point? I'm happy to read the question again if you'd like.
Yes, please read the question.
Totally.
ADHD is my worst enemy.
This is a safe space. So the question was, how can two LGBTQ plus Indigenous advocates use virtual methods to advocate for their communities? And how have you used those methods?
Yeah, I think because of like the day and age that we live in, like technology and social media are such big factors in our life. It's a really good way to be able to get your story out there and start sharing with folks because you don't know who relates to you or who's going through similar experiences. And that alone can be very touching and very inspiring to people. And I think for me personally, that's one of the things that was a really big driver for me in my advocacy because I saw how much people needed to hear more stories of Two-Spirit youth or and their experiences. And I learned that the more I shared that, the more I also found how to navigate my own journey and how I was like fully exploring my identity. So I think it's a really important thing when you're trying to start your advocacy journey as well because it touches base with so many people. Like I know people like from the States, like, and especially in Canada, like you touch base with like so many different people all over. And it's something that's really inspiring, especially when you struggle to feel connection and community, maybe where you are. And I know that that's for me one of the things that I was dealing with. And when I started finding a lot of other Two-Spirit people that weren't like in my community because I was struggling to find them, it made me feel less alone. So I think it's definitely a really good thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I really couldn't agree more. Like, one thing that I've been lucky enough to learn in my personal exploration of my culture and identity as a two-spirit person is how healing it is to be able to find people who have that shared sense of identity with you, especially looking like at the historical context. And like this panel is in honor of Truth and Reconciliation Day, of how residential schools really really harmed our two-spirit community, and how it is very hard to find two-spirit elders, to find people who are comfortable saying that they're two-spirit because of the consequences of the trauma that was imparted on our ancestors. So being able to, have this digital platform or, digital landscape even to connect with people from all across Turtle Island who are in that same cycle of healing, because that's what you're describing to me as a cycle of healing, to coming back into yourself, and doing that through community, which is very much in honor of our ancestors. So those are both fantastic answers. And honestly, such a great start to this panel. My next question, I'm going to start with you, Trinity. How can you navigate online hate and bullying while doing advocacy and community work in digital spaces?
It can honestly be pretty difficult. I know when I was first starting out, I would really let the bigots get to me. Like I was like, oh my gosh, like I would see a comment and I would make a video back and like sometimes I think it was also like seeing like how much people would stand with you against the haters and stuff sometimes. But I've also learned over time that it's just really exhausting to like feed into that all the time. And I had to like learn from my own piece, like, okay, I'm just gonna delete block. Like I don't even have the time for it. I'm not gonna use my platform or my space for that. Like, because I also find when you keep that stuff, that's when more of them start trickling in. I'm like, all right, now. Like now this is getting too much. So yeah, I think it's really important to like protect your space and to protect your energy because that your platform is also like your energy. You're putting yourself out there and people can very easily access that. And sometimes people just really want a reaction out of you.
Absolutely. Haley, do you have anything to add to this experience?
Okay, well, so I used to be one of those people that would fight fire with fire because in my head I was like, if you're gonna be that guy who's making a public comment, like I'm gonna show it to everybody else and like hopefully you can learn from this interaction. I used to do it so much my account actually got banned for doing, but it was because I was resharing these really awful like hate comments that were coming at me, but then people reporting it like as it was me because I was sharing it on my page. But I think also doing that was helping to like to make people realize that this stuff is still like ongoing and still happening. And it's not something that has happened like way before and you're like, oh, you know, we're all just like living and chilling, like nobody cares anymore. And it's like, no, there are still people in the comments that are saying like super hateful things like, oh, hope you get picked up by like a white van on the side of the road, and like just really horrible things. And it took a long time for me to also, it's like to keep my peace in that way too, because feeding into energy to that really just puts a damper on your spirit and your own medicine. And so, you know, it took a while for me to just not even look at it anymore, because it's what matters most is my own opinion on myself and what I do for community, and well, how my community sees me as well, and how my family sees me. And so, like, what does it matter that some stranger on the internet who doesn't even know who I am is spewing hateful, rude comments to me? And so, yeah, I've learned to now block people. My block list is very long, and I do that, yes, to keep my peace, because I don't need that for my mental health. It's also about keeping up with your mental health too. Like the more you feed into that, the more that your mental health deteriorates. I probably said that word wrong, but that's okay.
No, you got deteriorate perfectly.
Okay, yes,
Oh my goodness. Sorry.
yes.
He was
um
walking on my keyboard.
oh,
Oh, that was gonna be bad. That was gonna be bad. We already knew that was gonna be bad. Yeah, Haley, I really agree with what you're saying. I mean, with my page Trans Rights Yag, I started it while I was sitting on my couch, so frustrated and honestly feeling dejected, seeing in January of 2024 the announcement of incoming anti-trans legislation here in Alberta. I remember sitting on my couch and just being like, I can't believe this is happening. I feel so powerless, and I don't want to feel powerless anymore. And creating this platform was how I found my voice. And then naturally, that did come with people finding the platform both in a positive and affirming supportive direction, and also in a negative wishing to cause harm direction. And for a very long time I had my comments completely shut off, and was like terrified because some of the messages that I've received, comments I've received, they're just really demeaning, and they're meant to erode your spirit. They're not meant to try to seek to understand or encourage like a conversation deeper. It's most of the hate comments that I get are genuinely in bad faith, which is really challenging when you're somebody who's, you know, trying to support your community and use this as a tool in uplifting and, you know, building resiliency. And I find for myself, I could not echo the block and report more. I think there is definitely merit to, you know, showing these things still happen. But I also know that it can be really overwhelming for somebody, especially in the nature of my page, to be really early in their transition and see these horrible things. And like with me, I'm trying to create a space where people can learn in a non-intimidating way. And I find by like limiting what people can say, my filter word list is so long on my social media. And by limiting, you know, what can be said, oh my gosh, it helps to create that safe space. So I guess my follow-up question to that then is, how do we create, you know, spaces that are safe online for our communities? Do either of you have anything coming to front of mind on that?
I actually, okay, so this isn't necessarily like a two-spirit queer space, but my friend Kyron Potts and Shannon Baker, who are two-spirit and queer and Indigenous peoples, they created a community of gamers called Nichi Clan. And I think what like it was such a like great idea to bring gamers together, to like not even have to be super serious about playing games, but just, you know, they'll text in the Discord, they'll be like, hey, I'm online, are you online? Like, yeah, let's play this game together. And I think being able to like create those like group chats or those like little organizations on Instagram or on Facebook, and inviting all your two spirit and your Indigenous friends, really helps, just like, again, like using media to like connect people and bring them together, especially because like for myself too, a lot of my friends like don't live in the same city, and so we have to use media and like FaceTime and Instagram to like connect and to keep up with one another. So I think being able to like create those little groups, and yeah, like I've also seen a lot of like Two-Spirit like picnics popping up here and there, of like people just coming together and like hanging out. And like these people don't even necessarily like know each other. And it's just people that they've met online who are Two-Spirit and who connect in that way and who feel a sense of wanting community. And so they come and they like share their medicine and they share their laughter and their joy together. And I think that's really amazing. So I really want to be able to see more groups like that out in the open, and who knows, maybe I'll start one here, maybe. Who knows, but yeah, that's, yeah.
Beautiful. I love what you were saying about, using the invention of the internet as a means to facilitate more connection, both in person and online and interpersonal. I think something that happens that is really unfair to our communities is so many people view indigeneity as being stuck in a past tense. But oh my God, he's climbing on my shelf. Indigenous people continue to evolve with the world around us. We will always be adapting to inventions and creation and still finding ways to hold our tradition and culture in these new worlds that we live in every day. Trinity, for yourself, what about creating safe spaces?
Yeah, I would say like because the online world is such an open and accessible place, I think that's where you have to like really utilize like not necessarily like private groups, but like I have a Facebook group that I started for the Two-Spirit people in my community because there isn't like any organization or anything really, like I'm in London, Ontario, which is sad because it's a pretty big city, that brings us together. And a lot of the Indigenous organizations that we have don't try to bring us together either. So when you kind of have to take things into your own hands, I just decided, okay, I'm gonna make a Facebook group so that way it can still moderate like who's joining, like I can make sure that no like haters are like sneaking their way in there. And it was just a safe place that I created so that we could share things that were going on in the community that maybe like because social media is such a big place, sometimes you don't always see all posts. It was like, okay, share what's happening, like that's happening in the queer community. It doesn't have to be like Two-Spirit, but anything that can bring us together. And I was also like, I'm also sharing updates on like stuff that I'm doing. So like when I'm trying to get like grant money and stuff, just to try to like anything I can do to try to like make events to bring us together. So I think if you really want to do that stuff, you just have to utilize like more private groups, stuff like that.
You both mentioned, like, so far in our panel, the things that you've built and created. And I think that's just such a beautiful representation of one of my favorite parts of Two-Spirit identity and community, and that's that we're doers. We follow through with action and broad oversight, and use our ability to walk between worlds to be good at the administrative and the community and I just love seeing Two-Spirit creation in all its forms. So I am so glad to hear everything that you two are, creating and building and recognizing the gaps and feeling the leadership to step up and work to, bridge those gaps. So my next question in the theme of bridging gaps is to both of you. What does reconciliation mean, and what does it have to look like for it to be effective? I'll let whoever would like to start.
I guess reconciliation can look different to everybody. Everybody has their own version of what that looks like and what that means to them. To me, reconciliation means taking those steps to educate yourself, to move in the right way, to come from a place of openness, understanding, respect, and self-awareness. Also, reconciliation, like, it's not something that can happen overnight. It sometimes takes years, and you have to be able to be ready to put in the work to reconcile with people or reconcile with you know, everything going on. But it's I feel like a lot of people like to use that word and like just throw it out there and be like, all right, it's out there, so now everything's good. But they're not actually doing the work, and they're not actually sitting there putting in the effort that it takes to actually come to an understanding of like what that means and what that actually looks like. So yeah, that's my version of what reconciliation looks like.
Beautiful. I think you said some really amazing things in there, especially, the intention that has to come with it. It can't just be something you say, and it's not something you are, it's something you do and something you live by and something that, informs all of the decisions that you make in a day. Trinity, what about yourself?
Yeah, I would say that like reconciliation to me, like I know that a lot of people are always so like focused on like reconciliation as a whole, but like I've really witnessed, especially now that I've started doing ceremonies and stuff, like there's just not a lot of reconciliation for the Indigenous queer community, and not even just Two-Spirit people. I think that there's a lot of it's very gender biased. Like there's only like the men and women teachings, and it's like there's not enough like inclusive spaces to just be like open and like remembering that there's a lot of history that went on in order for like Two-Spirit to have to work so hard to go into this resurgence. So I think that like we've had to do a lot of the work ourselves, and like it's difficult when you don't have a lot of people supporting you or not taking the time to like understand like what the queer community has gone through to get to here. So I think that that's like really important. Like when you're also looking up like Indigenous history, it's also important to look up the Two-Spirit Indigenous history and how you can support with that.
I could not agree more. Something I've been saying, like leading up to this presentation, like talking about why people should come to this panel, is that so often we hear people talk about residential schools very frequently, but we don't hear a lot of the Two-Spirit history that's interconnected with that, about how there was intention in segregating these children by gender, how there was intention in what was taught to each gender, how there was intention in like literally the reason why there was such a big rush of a bunch of residential schools being built at once was because of a group of Two-Spirit people being brought to the crown and saying, look, they don't even know what gender they are. We need to act now. And by failing to continue that sentence, when we talk about, honoring residential school survivors and looking at the legacy of residential schools, we're continuing to prevent healing from our communities. Something that helps me in accepting my transness is when I think about, how my transness would have been received 7 generations ago. According to the teachings that I have, my spirit has been meant to be here since time immemorial, exactly as it is, as a Two-Spirit queer trans person. Would that have been an issue? Like, but prior to contact? No. And that's something that has helped me a lot in accepting my transness and, feeling pride and value in myself, is recognizing that, the hostility I feel from the world around us was not always there. And this land was never meant to hold that hostility. And through that reshaping of my worldview, it's really, really impacted my ability to care for myself and my community. So I guess on that note, um, what do you guys think would, you know, be a path forward in making sure Two-Spirit people are included in these conversations?
Well, I think it really needs to start in communities too. I think there needs to be more Two-Spirit gatherings, Two-Spirit powwows, just so that, you know, elders can come and attend to, and, you know, people who might not be so open-minded, maybe hopefully like will come and like can witness Two-Spirit joy, and can maybe start like taking into account like, why am I so hateful towards like people in my community, like sometimes my own family, my own blood. And it's just like, yeah, I think it needs to start with community first, because there's such like an internal like intergenerational trauma that has come about with colonization and taking away Two-Spirit peoples, and erasing our history, essentially. Like, the reason why it's so hard to find a Two-Spirit elder is because a lot of our history was erased, and they tried really hard to keep that erased. And I think there's also this misrepresentation, or this misinformation about how Two-Spirit is something that just is new and was coined in, was it 1990?
1990.
Yeah, and it's like, no, this is something so that non-Indigenous folk could easily understand something that has been around since forever, that has been around since colonization. And yeah, but yeah, I think it needs to start first with our communities, and just I guess exposing them more to Two-Spirit people around them, and like being like, hey, we are here in community and we do deserve to be here and to take up space, and to have you guys like see us, like, I think this is the time now where a lot of Two-Spirit people are like kind of done hiding and like being ashamed for who they are, and there's more of us like popping out and like sharing our medicine and our teachings and our dances, going to like what was it, the first Two-Spirit powwow in Toronto. I think it was like 3 years ago. And it was just so magical. And you could just feel the like healing energy from everybody and the joy from everybody. And like, it was just so beautiful to witness. And it just saddens me that there are people out there who really don't believe that Two-Spirit people should be alive. And so yeah, it starts with community.
Yeah, I once again completely agree. One of the things that I have found to be very effective is I had been given teachings from an elder about language. And this teaching talked about how when the language bundles were given from Creator to all of the different Indigenous peoples across Turtle Island, those language bundles were complete. Every single string of sounds you could ever imagine were included in that language bundle in its inception. So we're not just creating new words, we're not making new things up. We've had terminology, whether it's been known to us like very presently or is something our mouths are finding for Two-Spirit people in traditional language since the dawn of time. I know with my work position, we have these little cards that this is all of the different Cree terms for Two-Spirit, and then here's Dene terminology for Two-Spirit. These are words that have existed for thousands of years, for time immemorial. And being able to connect folks back to that knowledge is definitely a very helpful way to start and should be rooted in communities. Trinity, what about yourself?
Yeah, I would say that like Haley said, it definitely starts in community. And like I know like for myself, like I very rarely get like scared to like express my identity, or like I'm very confident in my Two-Spirit identity. And there's been times I know, especially in ceremony, like it's very difficult when you're stepping into the ceremonial world to be confident in that Two-Spirit identity, because one, it's there are no Two-Spirit ceremonies, and two, you're having to kind of give up a little bit of yourself to be like, okay, like I have to go attend these women's ceremonies because I'm women like presenting. And it's annoying because you don't know if those elders are safe spaces. And I think it's important that elders who conduct ceremonies really make it known that they are a safe space for Two-Spirit people to like be out there and like let their presence be known. Like, and I just went to like a ceremony where I was getting ready for a fasting camp, and I didn't say that I was Two-Spirit, but I ended up finding out later that the lady who was conducting the ceremony, she has a Two-Spirit nephew. So I was like, oh, like, why was I so scared? But it was because they were only talking about like the men and women's teachings. She never really expressed anything about like even being open to like Two-Spirit people like coming into the space. Whereas I've experienced other elders who just acknowledge, even when there's no Two-Spirit people there, that it's just amazing to like have them there when they do come. So I think it's really important to have that, even not even just in ceremonial spaces, but also just community gatherings, just so we know that it's a safe space for us to go.
Absolutely. That, you know, explicit intention or that explicit welcoming is unfortunately really needed because the amount of harm so many two-spirit people have faced often leads us to a place of hypervigilance where we're always, you know, scared of what violence could find us. And that understanding of, you know, looking at the history of how we got to this hypervigilant place is something that can really inform folks in how they create a space. And I totally like empathize with you in your experiences going to ceremony. I know for myself as a trans person, walking into sweat or walking into pipe and figuring out where I go to sit is a bit of a stressful moment. And in those ceremonies where it says, where like somebody explicitly says two spirit people can sit wherever they'd like, I'm like, okay, great, perfect, awesome. But when that's not said, even if I know I have other people in that ceremony who would support me going where I want to go, there still is that fear of what would I do if something comes up, you know? And how do I approach this conversation with an elder if something were to come up, and not only at a ceremony leader respectfully in a way that is non-challenging or you know, isn't disrespectful. And that's definitely a hard place to find comfort in. And I think the more two-spirit people have their own spaces, their own affinity spaces, that strength can build and that confidence can build in our, you know, resilience we find from one another. But it's so important that, you know, elders who are allied, knowledge keepers who are allied, are being outward about that. And honestly, the online platforms we have now are a great way to be outward about that, you know, to be sharing things, to be putting little pride flags in your bios or your email signatures, even sharing your pronouns are all great ways that I can, you know, perceive where I'm going to be safe or not. So let me see what other questions we have. What what does your reconnection with your two-spiritedness or your you know, joy delving into your two-spiritedness, how does that impact your day-to-day life? I know for myself it's something that brings me a lot of joy and comfort and sense of peace like I mentioned, but what has, you know, coming into your two-spiritedness been for both of you folks? Trinity, would you like to start?
Yeah, sure. I think for me, it's been a really amazing experience. It was something that honestly I think saved my life because I was really depressed and I was really lonely for like a really long time. I was always wondering why I wasn't fitting into certain areas or why like I wasn't meshing with certain people. And like when I started to find like people who were sharing their stories about like exploring their own two-spirit identity, it started to make sense to me. And that's also like why I started sharing because I was like, okay, if that's what that did for me, then I hope that I can do that for somebody else. Because it's pretty awesome waking up every day and just like being able to be free and how I express myself. Like, oh, okay, like, am I going to be feminine or am I going to be masculine? And also not worrying about the gender norms for certain things. Like, it's when you want to do whatever you want to do, like just do it. Like if they say, "Oh, that's for a man," I literally look at them and like laugh. I'm like, there is nothing that is just for a man. Like I'm like everybody can do it. Same with no, there's nothing that's just for a woman. Everybody can do it. And I think that when you find that freedom, it's next level. So, yeah.
Yeah, Haley, yourself.
Um, what was the question?
Yeah, how has coming into your two-spirit identity, you know, impacted?
Yes. Yes. Okay. It has definitely impacted me very positively. I think so I grew up in a white household. I was adopted at birth, and so I grew up with just mostly white people around me. I went to a predominantly white school, and I remember growing up, I was always called like the little brother of the family. I was like a weird little guy. I was a weird kid, and people would make fun of me a lot. And I just like I couldn't grasp and understand like why I couldn't find anyone that was like me. I was like, I can't relate to anyone. Like I feel like I'm such a like an outcast and a weirdo, and like nobody's gonna want to be friends with me. And so I became really like isolated and alone, like kind of like a lone wolf. And I was like, I don't need anybody then. If like if I can't find anyone that I can relate to or that can understand me or like won't like judge me, then like what's the point of trying to like interact with other people? And so that took me down like a really dark path of like addictions, and I was also on the streets for like about a year, and I was like really lost and disconnected, and I felt like I was spiraling, and that like and I accepted that this was going to be my life. I was like, well, this is what I got. This is what's going to happen. And I'm fine with that. And that's just life. And then I remember going on TikTok and seeing Two Spirit representation and seeing Indigenous queer people. And it just like completely opened my eyes and like wowed me. And I couldn't believe that there are people out there that I haven't seen before. I was like, what the heck? Like, where have you guys been hiding my whole life? And it really made me feel more confident and comfortable in who I was as a person. And then it was like slow changes of like just like changing how I talked, or like how I like showed up to and dressed and did my hair and did my makeup, and it just like I just gradually more and more became who I was always supposed to be. And it took a really long time to get there, but I've been so happy and like confident in myself as a person and the connections that I make around me. And I'm so thankful to those Two Spirit people in my life. I got to give a shout out to Karen Potts and Scott Wabineau. You know, finding their pages really helped me understand who I was and feel confident, and just to like not give a damn what people thought and said about me. So yeah, it's been such an amazing journey. And I still feel like I'm going on that journey. Like I feel like the journey is never ending. And it's the same with like how you are as a person, you know. It's so fluid and it's never stagnant. And I feel like you're always changing. So yeah, I'm really excited to be on this journey.
That's beautiful. And, I'm so glad that finding those folks helped you in, having the joy that you have now in your life, and the sense of, value and security that you have in your life as well. And both of you like brought this up about how, seeing other people be Two Spirit and be free in who they are helped both of you be free in who you are. And recently through my work, we were putting on a drumming workshop, or a drum making workshop, and we had received like some potential anxiety and hesitation about us having a Two Spirit person teach drum making. And got some of that pushback that you were talking about, Trinity, of like, no, this is for men. And that, there was someone who's a bit concerned that people in the community might be concerned. And when I got there and we actually saw everybody who registered for the workshop, it was primarily women, elders, who were like, I've been waiting for an opportunity for this my whole life, and finally here one is. So Two Spirit resurgence genuinely benefits everyone. It benefits every single person who has been harmed by colonialism, and every single person who has been forced to dwindle their identity into a clean, neat box. And it's restricted healing spaces from people and healing opportunities from people to live in a world of a constructed gender binary. Yeah, I really am so grateful to you both for, having this conversation. I'm going to go now to some of our Q&A questions from the audience. So I did see a Q&A pop up about the language resource I shared. I did share the link to the website where you can download that resource. So feel free to knock yourselves out with that. But the first question for our fellow panelists is, how can we find and celebrate emerging queer Indigenous voices online?
That's a very good question. I feel like it's hard to sometimes specifically like search for people online, and I feel like it's sometimes like random. You'll be like, oh, what the heck? I've never heard of this creator. And so I guess it's a lot of like it also depends on your algorithm, which I hate saying that, but like as a social media person, it really does. Like if you're liking native TikTok content, then you're going to be given native TikTok content. If you're liking lesbian content, you're going to be getting lesbian content. And so it like really depends on what you're liking on social media, and like kind of, I guess it's like in a way like manifesting. You're like trying to manifest that for yourself. Like, give me the two-spirit queer content. So yeah, but also I guess you can try and like I know there are some two-spirit organizations that will share people's profiles, and other orgs as well that you can get connected to. So I always start off with like being in your own city, like finding like your friendship center, or like if there is a two-spirit center around you, like trying to like start there and then kind of like branching off.
Mm-hmm. Totally. It's funny you mentioned that about algorithm, because when I'm in Fort McRae, I have to travel to Fort Chipewyan a lot for work. When I'm in Fort Chipewyan and I'm on Wi-Fi in Fort Chipewyan, my entire For You page is powwow. And I'm like, wait a minute, what do you what do you know that I don't, TikTok? How do you know where I am? Amazing. Trinity, what about for yourself?
Yeah, I would say really utilize like the two-spirit hashtags on social media. Like I've actually had like youth find me through there and been like, I found your videos on two-spirit. I'm exploring my identity, and like and they would just message me and ask me questions, and I'd just be like, wow, okay, like that's really cool. Like it's good to know that that is a good it's a good resource for people when you're trying to find those voices to help you like navigate any like your identity, advocating, like all that stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, totally. And my suggestion as well is kind of building off what both Haley and Trinity said is, finding those spokes. So like those bigger organizations, especially if you can find podcasts of people, then you get a whole network of everyone they've had on their podcast. So like there's the Native Youth Sexual Health Network is a great resource as well. If you watch out for their podcast in October, you might see somebody familiar. But they collaborate with people all the time, and primarily in a youth focus. So definitely check them out. But yeah, look for those spokes, those organizations that do a lot of collaboration, and then see what you can find from there. So one of these questions is, I believe it's based off what I said. I would like it if you expanded about this. You all said it's a delicate balance of respect for elders and coming into yourselves. Do you find that due to the destruction of two-spirit history, that elders are still finding their place beyond colonialism and Christianity? Absolutely. I mean, when we think about the function of residential schools, it was to kill the Indian and the child. That is the famous phrase that everybody knows. And through that process, it included everything. Two-spiritedness was an innate part of our communities. So if you're killing the Indian and the child, that means food, language, like clothing, like even games, leisure, sense of humor, and behavior, including sexual diversity and gender diversity. So we also have to recognize how those lessons were imparted onto our ancestors, which was through violence most of the time. And when you create a resistance to something from violence, that is then a trauma response that needs to be navigated through healing. So absolutely, there is, there is definitely challenges with elders, walking with us and deconstructing some of the violence that they experienced. But that's one that a lot of the folks I know approach with a lot of empathy and care and recognition for the reality of the situation. Haley and Trinity, do either of you have additions?
Yeah, just going off of what you said, like, it's like I'm never gonna get angry at an elder for thinking the way they do. Oh my gosh, sorry, wow, English. For thinking that the way that they do, because they have gone through so much trauma and so much pain and hurt. And so I never want to like disregard them or to put them aside or like to be like this is a lost cause. I always come from a place of love and sharing my own two-spirit medicine with them in a way of where it's like I come from, again, a place of like love and softness and gentleness. And like if I am going to go into your ceremony, you do want to have me sit in a certain way, I'm not going to pick up a fuss and fight back at you. I'm in your territory, I'm in your ceremony, I'll follow your rules and stuff. And it is really great, when you do find elders that make you feel comfortable and respect and understand your two-spirit identity. But yeah, I would never ever blame an elder for the way that they think or the way that they act because of what they have gone through colonization.
Trinity?
Yeah, I think like I have family members who have gone to like day school and they don't say like creator, they say God. Like they believe in like Christianity, but at the same time, that like auntie, like she's like it's mainly like my one auntie and like that side of my family, but she's still the most like loving family member that I have towards me. So I think that sometimes it's difficult to understand also where that elder's at with their reconnecting, with their healing, and sometimes they are trying to break down those barriers, but she has apologized to me before by saying like I'm sorry, like I call it God, like please don't get mad at me. And I said like I could never get mad at you, like same as Haley was saying, like it's always good to come at a place of love because you know that they're still trying to work through a lot of trauma. And when you have the type of religion like ingrained into your brain the way that they did, it's very difficult to overcome. And a lot of them though still have the ability to still be very open-minded and like wanting to learn. Like they are very like open to reconnecting. So I think it's just whether they're willing to have that conversation with you and where not necessarily like a deep conversation, but just where they stand really in how they view two-spirit people.
Mm-hmm. And I really appreciate your point about that conversation piece, Trinity, because we can't paint every single elder with the same brush. We can't paint every single person with the same brush. We know that every individual is coming from a place of personal experience, and it requires one-on-one connection, relationship building, trust building, and walking together in a good way to achieve, safe, inclusive, and and informed spaces. Um, and as well, like it's very heartbreaking to think that if we look back at historically who we were, whenever I see any sort of like non-inclusive behavior, it's very saddening to me to know that this wasn't always the way that your family believed about queer and trans people. Yeah, I am so grateful to you both for that conversation, all about empathy, care, and seeking to understand. So what the next question that we have is, what does land back look like in two-spirit contexts? And is there any way to help folks fully understand the importance of two-spirit resurgence and identity? Ooh, I don't know how that question is ending grammatically. If somebody is two-spirit, I guess. Oh, if they're included? Yes. So if something is coming from a two-spirit context, how do we underscore the importance of that coming from a two-spirit context, I guess? I personally, oh, sorry, you go ahead, Trinity.
I just had this thought kind of like, I think when you're on the journey of understanding your two-spirit identity, there is the factor of it not just being like a label for your identity, but also kind of a role in your community. I remember I was at a two-spirit gathering and it was Jaylene Time talking about how like a lot of land defenders, water protectors, a lot of them used to be two-spirit people. And I think it's important that in that two-spirit resurgence, we remember that we should be stepping into those roles again. And that is, I think, a really big thing when it comes to the context of land back, because we're the loudest voice that there could be. So I think it's really important that we really utilize that.
Mm-hmm. I know within the Walking Between Worlds that two-spirit people have been mediators for a very long time, and helping to facilitate conversations between opposing sides. So I think, valuing two-spirit voices is also a way to continue the conversation of land back. What about yourself, Haley?
Yeah, just adding on to that, Two-Spirit people have always been, like you said before, those in-betweeners. And Two-Spirit people are always there to like help open doors and to open minds of other people's. And in some communities, you know, when ceremony would start, sometimes they wouldn't even start ceremony unless a Two-Spirit person was present. And so, yeah, and I like what you said before too, Trinity, that Two-Spirit people have always had some of the loudest voices, and it's really great that we use our voice in advocacy, mostly because like who else is going to do it other than a two-spirit person ourselves on two-spiritedness. And yeah, so just understanding that like also doing land back is understanding the land and the community, and like you said before, the roles that you take in community too. Because yeah, being two-spirited is also how you move through community as well.
Beautiful. And my final question for our last 5 minutes is, as 2S LGBTQIA plus advocates and leaders, how can we better support one another as we all embark on our various advocacy work and community building? Right off the bat, as an organizer, I have to say one of the most effective things we can do for one another is take a deep breath when we're feeling like angered or really pissed off by somebody else. All of us are trying to move the needle in a direction that is better for our entire community. And being able to recognize we all have a shared goal, even if it's not through the same means, is a great way to approach others with humility, and to recognize we don't all have the same gifts and skills. We use the gifts and skills we have. And by looking through collaboration through that lens of humility, we can get a lot farther in understanding one another and not infighting. Haley, I saw you unmute. I know you have something cool to say.
Conversation, always coming from a place of wanting to hear, not just to talk, but to also hear back, right? It's a two-way street. It's never just like you trying to hark down on somebody. And I feel like with how technology and social media has turned over, I feel like there are a lot of people online who feel like they need to like dictate how people do things and the way that they move and what they share and stuff. And I can see from some instances if there's like harm being shared. Yes, like there is a place to talk about that, but it always starts with a conversation. And I think people tend to like skip that part and go right into like the advocacy of it and like trying to like tear down that person. But like it's like, did you actually even like message that person and like see if there could be any like resolution or like any problem solving, or like just being able to like understand each other from your guys' point of views, because maybe you'll learn something that you weren't expecting to. And so yeah, just conversating and also coming, I always say this, with an open mind. Like I feel like a lot of people try to be so closed mind and look at it as like a one-way view, but like there's so many different views out there and everybody is not the same. Everybody's unique, everybody's different, everybody has different thoughts. So yeah.
Trinity.
Yeah, I would also say like it's important to remember, like also like Roman was saying, like we all have different skills and abilities, and I think it's important that like we remember it's not a competition. We're all working towards the same or similar goals at the very end of the day. And I think it's remember like we have to remember to clap for each other and like celebrate each other. Like don't see what somebody else is doing as competition or like, oh, like okay, like now I need to do that, like one up them. Like it's you just gotta celebrate each other, and everybody's doing hard work. And I think it's good to acknowledge that. And the more that we support each other's work and advocacy and what we're trying to do, I think that will amplify the message.
Beautiful. I just want to thank Trinity and Haley again for joining us today at It Gets Better Canada for this beautiful, incredible panel. A huge thanks as well to Sunny and Ella for organizing this event and bringing us all together. I know I had a lot of very cup-filling conversations this afternoon, and really enjoyed getting to know both of you so much more. And this is really going to be something I continue thinking about going into next week with Truth and Reconciliation Day coming, and just recognizing that we are so much more powerful together. So thank you both so much for joining, and thank you everybody in the audience for joining as well. This has been lovely.
Thank you so much, everyone. I had so much fun, and it was so great to just like chat and hang out with everybody.
Yes, thanks so much, everyone. I had an amazing time.
All right, thank you. I'm going to end the meeting now. Thank you everyone for attending, and I hope you have a wonderful night.